dropping the untold stories of industry leaders, influencers, and insights on future innovation. I'm John Davidson, and this is the DLC Drop Podcast. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the DLC Drop Podcast. It is my pleasure to have my good friend and fellow skater, Gregg Witt, join me. A little bit about Gregg. Gregg is an entrepreneur, chief strategy officer at Engaged Youth Co., author, best-selling book, The Gen Z Frequency, former professional skateboarder, and original founder of the 90s skateboard and apparel brand Good Times. Gregg, thank you for joining us.
I'm glad to be here, John, always.
Yeah, man. So, man, one thing that I love to share with the audience with each of our guests is how me and the guest met. And what's funny is a lot of my guests have been personal friends, but you and I met in a very, I guess you could say, corporate way, which is we connected on LinkedIn when I was at GameStop. And then if memory serves, and I'm curious to hear your interpretation of this, but you hit me up and we got on the phone, and I want to say 15 minutes into our call, I was like, dude, I'm a skateboarder too. And then everything just clicked and it was like, oh, yeah. You get it. You skate, yeah. You can relate.
It cuts so much of the BS out of the whole picture, and it unifies you on so many different levels. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's just, there's something about, and I think it's the game. It's the same in gaming. It's the same in esports. It's the same in skateboarding. It's like when you're part of a niche subculture, when you've experienced those things, like you and I both have put our bodies on the line for tricks, for that 1 second feeling of the roll away or whatever. And just knowing that we both have done that and love it and get it. It just is a connection that is so much broader than just skateboarding. And it's, I think we've stayed closer in connection. We've strove to work on all sorts of different stuff, much more than we would have if we were just non-skaters.
Absolutely. I feel like it's a qualifier, on a lot of levels.
Yeah. Well, and I remember too, I was out in LA one time and I was like, what are you doing for the rest of the day? I was like, let's go skate Venice. And you brought your kids and we're skating that bowl, and you're a bowl skater. You're a transition skater. I'm a street skater. So I remember actually thinking, I don't think I shared this with you, but we roll up to Venice. I remember thinking dude, I can't really skate anything here. And they've got this 10-foot deep bowl, and Gregg's just ripping it. And I'm like, okay, let me carve. Let me see if I can hit some tiles. And then I ended up doing a backsmith on it, and which I literally never would have thought I even had the ability to do that trick, but it was the vibe.
No, it was awesome. I remember that very well. In fact, I'm a little bit big round wall things, big structures like that sometimes actually weird me out because I'm more of a vert skater, but yeah. I will save that for a different podcast.
Yes. Episode 2 with Gregg Witt, but this is episode 1. So I gave a little bit of a background with your intro there, but there's a lot to unpack there. What was the first stop on this crazy journey that you've been on?
I got my start in entrepreneurship at age 16 when I started Good Times Skateboards. It was originally called the Good Times Intelligence Agency because we didn't think that adults would take us serious as Good Times because we were such partiers.
Yeah.
And then the intelligence agency part, we were kind of vibing on the secret agents of Good Times kind of thing. And we went with that. And I did the Good Times skateboards, and then later apparel. Man, we even started our own apparel factory from 91 to 97, 98.
Cool. So, I gave an intro as to, what you've done throughout your career. There's a lot there. Can you tell us, share with the audience, what was the first step on this crazy journey you've been on?
The first step for me was definitely founding Good Times Skateboards in 1991 when I was still in high school, age 16. I was an amateur, a very active amateur before becoming a professional skateboarder, and just wanted to kind of take put things in my own hands and create my own company. and
Right.
we did it. And the long story short, it became a global brand within the first year, and it was just an incredible journey from 91 all the way to 1997, 98.
Wow. So were you entrepreneurial, or should I say were your parents entrepreneurial? Cuz I've just started on my entrepreneurial journey, and I never knew that I would be owning my own company, starting my own thing. I wasn't surrounded with people like that, but you started that at age 16. Was Did that come from your family or somewhere else?
I think it came. So the answer is twofold. I think it came from my own personal drive uh, to do something and to create. But yes, my grandfather and my father are, historically, serial the true essence of serial entrepreneurs,
Wow.
from breweries to vending company to catering businesses, um, very successful and unsuccessful businesses. And I grew
Sure.
up in sort of the fury of entrepreneurship. So I actually kind of grew up not wanting to work, thinking that workers were workaholics, kind of didn't want to do work, which is interesting. That's why I say it's a two-part question, because I was very driven from finding that passion through skateboarding
Yeah.
and that culture, which pushed me to want to do my own thing because frankly, I didn't want to work for them.
Oh, I get
And
it.
that drove me, and they gave me, because of their entrepreneurship, their entrepreneurial spirit, primarily my father's, gave me the sort of foundation and the wings, or the opportunity to take and go on that mission.
Yeah, that's super interesting. So essentially, to avoid work, you started your own skateboard company to say, I don't want to work. And then you
Yeah,
created a bunch of work for yourself, but the type of
create
work
a
that
lot of
you
work for
wanted to do.
myself. Yeah, yeah. By the end of the first year, I realized this was gonna be a lot of work.
Yeah. So I've been involved with one thing I'm thankful of is, I never was actually a pro. I never had my name on a board, which for non skaters listening, the way that professional skateboarding works is your board sponsor determines your status. And what that means is you have your own signature products. And so people are always confused thinking that I was a pro skateboarder because I got paid to skate and I did it for a living for a certain amount of time. And for non skaters, that sounds like pro. But for uh, the skateboarding world, it's a very specific definition. Now, what
Yeah,
I've really enjoyed is being at the ground floor of a lot of companies that are starting. Now, none of them really made it big, but my first sponsor was a skate shop called Onshore Board Shop in Visalia, California. And
yeah,
they threw a contest. I won it. I gave them my sponsor me video. I was their first sponsored rider. And then there's some smaller companies I was on the ground floor of. But man, it's a challenge. What were some of the big challenges, or some of the things that you didn't expect, or how'd you figure out along the way as a teenager?
well, I had a few mentors. I'm not going to lie. I think mentors were key, were integral. Graham Stanners was a professional skateboarder from Scotland. He really, you know, that with my dad wasn't really able to guide me through the skateboarding industry, obviously. So Graham basically taught me, where we make the wood and where we get the wood from, how we get things screen printed. There wasn't digital printing processes at the time.
Yeah,
How you literally do the same thing with the t-shirt and stickers, and basically just learned how to make things at
yeah,
that time. And then I eventually sort of realized that, because I had been traveling the world doing skateboarding demonstrations, we call it tours,
yep,
for shops and skateboarding distributors for years. And I think it wasn't until, I would sit down with Graham, and we would have to do sales, and he would, pull out his list, a piece of paper, with numbers and fax numbers and phone numbers on it, and say, hey, we need to call these people and sell products. That I made the connection that, hey, I had already stayed with these people. I knew a majority of these people that we were going to sell to. So the first wave of selling to the distributor, who then sold to the retail stores, was actually pretty easy, because I had either stayed on their couches, or they had put us up for several years when we were younger. But
sure,
I think an interesting story for me, like a real big learning as far as like from business 101, was we had bought 500 skateboards, filled them on the shelves of the garage, we had made all the calls to the distributors. We sold those boards in a matter of like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden all that money comes in. And, as a 16-year-old, I was like, wow, we're rich.
Right.
I mean, I thought we were rich because I could see the bank, and everything. And then Graham looks at me and I was like, okay, so like, what do we, why I looked at him and I said, well, what do we do now? And he says, well, we need to order more boards and we need to sell them. So next thing you know, we have, and I would say, I don't know if that was the great mentoring that came to me, but anyways, we ordered another 500 boards,
Yeah.
mostly the same stuff. And I'm like, now what do we do? Cool. We just, he's like, well, he gave me another list. This list of shops was like several thousand. It was a big sheet of papers, stack of papers. And he just dropped it in front of me and he said, call them up and start selling. And I was like, whoa, what the heck? So I remember, like, to speed it up a little bit, I remember like shutting all the doors into the garage, picking up the phone, kind of had a little bit of an idea. I wouldn't even call it a script, but I would say kind of like I knew what I was going to say.
Yeah.
And I remember picking up the phone going, hi, my name is Greg. Go. And I would just hang up the phone, and then I would get freaked out because I was like, I'm going to tell this. What am I saying to these people? And I would get a little bit further to where eventually I would say, I'm calling, my name's Greg. I'm, calling from Good Times. And do you want to buy any of our boards? Eventually somebody would keep talking to me. And I eventually, after like a couple of weeks of doing that, kind of just learned how to do direct to retail sales and kind of got into the vibe of it. That was one major lesson. There were hundreds of lessons learned in the process of obviously building that brand.
Let me ask you about one lesson, because this is something that I deal with to this day, and I think a lot of people do, is hearing no. So did you have a problem initially with getting turned down? Was that a fear that you had, or were you okay with it?
No, I wouldn't say I was ever okay with it. I think when you're younger, it's sort of like you don't know any better and you just go, go, go. And I think when you get a little bit more seasoned or get some more experience under your belt,
Yeah.
you sort of know or you understand what no means more. But yeah, but as far as like when you would call someone and someone would say, no, I don't want that, or it's not hot, or, that's not something we could sell. You take that to heart. And
Yeah, especially if you created it, right? I mean, they're
yeah,
rejecting your creation, not
yeah,
just like, hey, I work for the cell phone company and you don't want to buy this phone. It's like they're rejecting your idea. And that's like way deeper of a
it
wound.
was way deeper. And I would say there's another kind of rejection too. And what you find out is like when I first started that company, and I've heard other young people that I mentor say say things similar. When I first started it, there was a lot of buzz, like, oh, that's super cool. Yeah, I'm really into it. But then I started hearing behind my back that like way more people were talking shit, were like,
Yeah.
oh, he'll never pull it off. Um, oh, they did that graphic, that sucked, or he's from the Midwest, he'll never get it right. This is
Yeah.
California, he'll never pull it off. And I can't stress to you like how much that drove me to succeed.
Oh,
And
the haters, dude.
and very rarely did anybody ever to this day really tell me that to my face. So
Interesting.
I kind of found out who my friends were. I could count them on like one hand. Um,
Yeah.
and entrepreneurship is no different today than it was then. That you have to really kind of like thicken up your skin and like at the same point in time dig deep into your heart to develop things that you want to create that you think are going to be amazing, not only for yourself but for others.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's super, super interesting. So take me back a little bit further. How did you start skateboarding in the first place? Is there a story there?
Yeah, I first started skateboarding in the 80s. Skateboarding was huge. So everybody in even my small town of Winona, Minnesota skateboarded. I just watched all, my friends at school skateboarding, and it wasn't something that I did very well. It wasn't something I was very natural at. Watched, people into BMX and skateboarding, and eventually we built a launch ramp, a another kid who was actually a little bit more into BMX, convinced my dad to build a quarter pipe. That quarter pipe turned into a 12-foot and then 24-foot wide half pipe. And then I picked up a magazine, went to the St. Louis Island Water Sports skateboard camp, and then
Yeah.
the rest was history. The rest was history for at that point, because I got connected into the skateboarding national community or network, and
Yep.
I was hooked at that point. I think it took me to experience the I don't want to say the thrill, but the feeling of riding these big ramps, which was something I felt like I just really enjoyed. Whereas if I was just purely going to be riding on the streets, I probably wouldn't have continued skateboarding. It wasn't that fun for me, nor was I very good at it.
Sure. Interesting. So now you're the chief strategy officer at Engaged Youth Co. You've been doing this agency thing with youth marketing for a while now. That's how we met, right?
Yeah.
We were talking with influencers and stuff like that. One thing that I think about influencers, I always say skateboarding was influencer marketing before influencer marketing.
Oh yeah.
And skateboarding is a very basic, it's not too complex, but essentially is you have a skateboarder and he's your favorite skateboarder and you ride what he rides and you wear what he wears just because you like him. Like Andrew Reynolds. Actually, great story here. I met Riley Hawk when he
Yeah.
was like 9. And so I was at the Morro Bay skate park with my mom. I was like 15, 16, something like that. And, his grandmother was there and my mom was there. They're sitting next to each other on the bench, and they're like, "Oh, your
Nice.
kid's good. Your kid's good." And his grandmother's like, "Yeah, his dad is Tony Hawk." And I was like, "No way, dude." And he was decked out in Reynolds gear, Andrew Reynolds gear. And that was
Nice.
right before Andrew Reynolds left Birdhouse and started Baker. But as I look at influencer marketing and I look at skateboarding, it's like this has been influencer marketing, and I'm curious, did you seen that or what was it that you experienced in skateboarding that enabled you to take this jump to this agency and this marketing world? Because I think people like what people trip out about me is like, "Oh, you're good at skateboarding, but you also do business." And it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of found my way here, and it's similar with you. I'm just really curious. There's a lot of people who are good at skateboarding that they didn't really do anything other than ski. I mean, what's a nice way to say it,
That's
right?
being
I mean,
nice. Yeah.
yeah, the skateboarding world does not enable, I would say, personal development outside of skating when you're on a tour and everybody's doing anything for you, right?
I
So,
believe that's an accurate statement, sir.
yes, yes. So, yeah, so that's enough of me talking. You take it away.
Yeah, no, I know. I think that like when you were building teams of athletes, of course, when I was in the mid 90s, I didn't call them athletes. They were just skaters,
Of course.
but they're athletes, and that's
Yes.
sports marketing. You
Yep.
learn later in life that that's sports marketing, and then that's talent management.
Right.
And every once in a while, you would work with sort of a musician or somebody else, more talent management. And
Sure.
then as we got more and more sophisticated with the athlete or musician marketing in the 90s, we had agreements and we had photo incentives because the magazines and videos were the way that was the medium. So I learned, and my business partners at the time learned how to craft these influencer agreements, these talent agreements very early on, which all stems from sports marketing.
Yeah.
And and then in 98 to 99, I as you know, but others don't, that I ran Era Footwear and Sense Footwear, which so there and therefore I was able to work with a lot of different creative talent in building up those footwear brands. And then we know how the story went with Nike SB figured out the market and all the boutique footwear brands died.
True.
So I had to reinvent myself and not to jump from the story, but that the 99s when I started the first youth marketing agency. But just to directly directly sink into that first question, I think the path through building skateboarding companies and then footwear brands definitely taught you business basics, marketing 101, how to deal with talent and influencers, if you will. and then just how to like work and build those relationships. Because the key that all that sort of ladders up to is working with brand or building and nurturing brand ambassadors, not
Right.
just doing like, hey, I need a skateboarder to work with me for this company for one ad,
Right.
and then I got this great ad, or I've got this great, nowadays a TikTok or an Instagram post. But
Right.
back then, what you learned was how do you develop a relationship with this talent and incorporate them, involve them in the company in a way that's meaningful, that's going to inevitably, be leveraged through all communication touch points and products to build the brand and sell products.
Right. I think too, what I'm taking from you is just like being aware of what you were doing, which is super cool. Like, even if maybe you weren't aware of it at the time, at least, you look back and you're like, hold up, I was doing all these things. And for
Yeah.
me, the unlock was when I went to marketing school and I got my marketing degree at Sacramento State. Shout out Hornets. Um, I was like, oh crap, like this is why this is why the skate shop did this. This is why the board company did this. This is why the apparel company did this, was like these marketing principles. So I was experiencing them, but I just didn't know what they were until in a, in a school educational background, it was presented to me. And I think that enabled me to get a much better education because I had all this life experience. I had experienced this stuff. I knew it. I just didn't know the definitions, or the terminology, I guess you could say.
Right. Right. I didn't know any terminology. In fact, the funniest thing, like when I built the first, was basically more of like a youth consulting company in 99, which was Premise Youth Marketing, which is my first youth marketing agency. When I
Cool.
started working with Landscape Structures on they were building youth and action sports focused facilities. And I was in a board meeting, with all these executives. They invited me in as this like youth or action sports oriented expert.
Yeah.
And when I, when I walked out of the meeting, before I walked out of the meeting, they said, "You're our consultant, our youth culture, our action sports consultant." And I literally walked out of that meeting and was like, "That's what this is. I'm a consultant." And I was like, because I literally didn't know it. And then I went and got a bunch of books, and I was like, "Oh, there's this whole consulting field." And
Yeah.
it sounds stupid now, but like that's literally how I learned. And next thing you know, it's like, oh, so we have to brand this. It's not just going to be like me. I've got other
Right.
colleagues or friends that are going to do this work with me, that worked with me on the other projects businesses I've been doing. And we're a consultancy. And then eventually, it's a youth marketing agency. Cause then I was asked to speak at a Y Pulse event in San Francisco. And I went there. I actually had like already had like 2 or 3 clients even. And I went there and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a youth marketing conference. I'm a youth marketing agency. This isn't a youth and action sports consultancy anymore. Now I got a youth
Dick.
marketing agency and hot damn, there's a whole business for this. I mean,
Who would have thought? Who would have thought perception is reality, right?
but it's the truth. It's good.
Man, I worked at this design studio a long time ago and I joined my friend who was an amazing graphic designer and animator. And but he was by himself, so there's this perception of being a freelancer, right? When I joined him in the spare bedroom of his house, and somebody would email him and I responded, business manager John Davidson. Dude, the perception changed our budgets. It changed the way people worked with us. It changed the types of clients we could get. And I didn't even do anything. I was still, I was drinking from the fire hose for sure. But just the fact that in people's minds, he went from some guy you pay hourly who works out of his house on the weekends and late at night to a design studio, and it's like, that trips me out so much. Just how I always say you're legit the moment people think you are, and it's perception.
Perception is everything. Yeah.
It
If you
is.
can deliver the goods.
Right. And that's the next step, right? Is then delivering on it.
Yeah.
Well, I think I'm curious to get your take on this because I have all these opinions of the skateboard industry, and you're probably the most adept person I know to kind of bounce them off of. But I think one of the things that has hit skateboarding, well, I'll say this. This is a better way to say it. The way that we consume content now and decreased attention spans and all that, I think has hit skateboarding more than just about any other industry. Because it used to be that, teams would spend 5 years putting together a video part. And you're touring the country, doing all these things, you put your video part, and then you're chilling. Like some dudes wouldn't even skate for like a year, until they had to start the 5-year process to start filming the next one, and then just everybody watches that video over and over and over again, and they buy all your boards and you're in all the magazines, and then somebody else releases it. Oh, we better get to work on our next one because now we're number 2 instead of number 1 because these other guys released their video. Well, I know especially the OGs in skateboarding are like, Instagram is effing killing us, because it's like I put my body on the line. I jump, and the rails people are skating nowadays, it's like I jumped down this triple kinker, sacked 5 times, whatever, for a 3-second clip, put out a 5-minute video part, and you said, cool, swipe up to the next one.
Rough.
And I think what I see, I think the brand that does it the best, and they do a number of different things very well, in my opinion, is Primitive Skateboarding. And what I've seen is like they do smaller pieces of content more often. And like rather than doing like a full skate video, which they've done one, Encore was recent, it was amazing. But when a new graphic comes out, they'll do a video with a couple of the guys, and so it's a way to get your product to get above the noise of everybody else rather than just seeing it on the board wall. And they just have shorter content that they release more often. So you're doing the same amount of filming about. Yeah. But it's your content strategy, the way you release it, which is super, super interesting.
Yeah. I mean, the magazines and DVDs, ran everything. Yeah. And the internet, it sounds crazy to say the internet, but the internet, and then let's just give it to Instagram, sped everything up by like a minimum of like 100,000 times faster.
Yes.
I mean, that's conservative, right? I was going to say 10,000, but I'm going to go with 100,000. I mean, call it 1 million, whatever you want, but that's how much faster. And I mean that like quantifiably by the competition, the young talent that's like chasing your heels to just capture attention, capture the attention that you were seeking.
I mean, is there any such thing as an NBD now? Like pros roll into a city, the kids are so good, homeboys already back nose blended the biggest rail in town. What are you even going to do on this?
It's the same for everything, like NBDs for people that do stunts, NBDs for dancers, the competition. So the bar is so high to capture attention that you just have to work that much harder and you have to be that much more creative. And I think in some sort of subcultures that were less established, it's just the norm. Whereas if you go into certain sports and industries like music and all of real action sports, basically, that, in some ways, had to completely reinvent everything, which was, and in some ways still is, painful.
Yeah, and I should say too, for our non-skating audience, NBD stands for Never Been Done. And one of the amazing things about a skateboard video is that if you're watching a skateboard video, the tricks that skater is doing on those obstacles in the streets have literally never been done by any other person on those obstacles. And so it is a major faux pas in skateboarding if you do a trick that has already been done on an obstacle, filming it for a video part, obviously warming up and everything. But that's a major challenge, is these athletes, these skaters are not just going out and like putting their life on the line for like their favorite trick or what sounds good at the time. No, they have a filmer there with them who's a human encyclopedia, and they're like, okay, Hollywood High. Let's see, it's been front Smith, back Smith, front tail, back tail, kick. Chaz Ortiz did a kickflip front board 5 years ago. Oh, is it kickflip back lip open? Nope. Nigel did that, right after doing that 270 lip. And you've got to find the trick that is number one going to be good enough for people, for it to make some noise, but also that literally nobody has ever done, which is insane. I'm so glad I'm not a pro skater. Is what I'm trying to say. Like, man, like, could you imagine like standing at the top of a 20 stair, like sore, and just looking down and just, after you scroll through Instagram and you're like, I gotta put like, Volcom needs an ad.
What you got, buddy?
Dude, you got Rhino at the bottom of the stairs, just like, send it, and you're just like, how did I get here? Like, it's so funny. Like, that was my dream, and being 37 years old, I look back and I'm like, I think the best thing that happened to me was I wasn't a little bit better at skateboarding and actually was pro. Man, what a trip. But we still do it. We still do it too. I mean, as much as we can, right? How often are you skating nowadays?
That's a good question. Depends on what week you ask me. I try to do twice a week.
Do you? Okay.
Yeah. If I want to learn something still, I have to do like 2 or 3 days a week. Learn, I mean like relearn.
Yeah.
When I say learn.
Dude, I feel so thankful. Like I keep muscle memory really well. So I actually don't have to skate that often. Now, when I say don't have to, I want to skate every day, obviously. But I skate about once a week. And if I get hurt, if I have to take a month off or something, dude, my first time back, I'm skating better than I ever have before because I'm fresh,
Yeah.
But, and I'm skating streets. Well, I'm not in the streets. I'm in the park. There's something that when the security guard kicks you out and they're younger than you are, it's time to stay in the park.
That's so funny, man. Put your baseball cap forward, buddy.
That's right. That's right.
Get back in the skate parks.
Oh man, that is too funny. So what's the most recent trick you've learned? I'm curious. And when was it? Like a new trick?
New trick. I think I just did like these Crail half cab 1-footed grinds, which are weird. Like hardly anyone can do it.
Okay. Like a Bob Burnquist thing?
It's not like, it's not even that. It's just kind of like a weird little trick. It's just people trip out on it because they think it's interesting. They think it's like super crazy, but it's really easy for me. I do all kinds of weird Crail tricks. Half cab Crails, alley-oop half cab Crails. I did alley-oop half cab Crail board smack. I wouldn't want like Andy McDonald or Jimmy Wilkins or anybody to go out and like take my tricks because they could go do them first try, but they're originals that I've created. Right. Like, I've got a whole bunch of tricks that no one's done that are just these weird random tricks I did because I could sort of invent weird things that no one else cared about doing. And
sure.
So I just happened to do them. And then there's so many hundreds of thousands of tricks that people, haven't really gotten to some of mine yet. So, but yeah, and just most of the stuff has just been perfecting things that I did in the past and just trying to bring them back and go higher, go further.
Yeah.
I wouldn't really say like something new in a long time.
Yeah.
Like brand new twists on things, here and there.
Yeah. I'm kind of like relearning. Like when I get bored with a trick and I stop doing it and then I lose it. And then I'm like, oh crap. Like I lost that trick. Like I got to relearn it. So that's kind of like my process. I don't think like what's on my agenda is like front over crooks. Like I've just like I haven't done that trick on rails in so long. And there's a perfect hip to rail I skate all the time. So I'm like, man, next time I go I need to like just do a bunch of them. Kickflip no slides is a cool one that I haven't done in a long time. I did a kickflip backflip. I sent you the clip, I think. A kickflip backflip I did for a little Alt DC Shoes footwear video. And I was so hyped because I hadn't done that trick in like 3 years, but I wasn't ready to not be able to do it anymore. And it was the biggest mental battle. Just like getting myself just to try it, it's like, it's such a
trick. I mean, like, for instance, like there's like the Memorial Bowl in San Diego. It's this huge crater with this like 6-foot channel and it's all at a big angle. Like, I guess I've like overcome because I just recently did like chest high, like backside ollies over it. And like the first time that I went to try to get over it, like I was almost like afraid my body wasn't going to go over it.
Yikes.
And so for me, like doing something that over a channel on something like with rounded corners is like still a major challenge for me. So that's like learning something new.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember like the last time I was at Tony Hawk's a while ago, I, you know, there's this for those who, viewers who don't know, there's this massive like, well, I think it's 8 foot, but it also has the opportunity of being 12-foot wide channel. And if you fall, you're basically going to fall like, about 15, 20 feet down to nothing, to the ground,
Yeah,
and
I've
die.
seen pictures and video of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember I was about going over a backside ollie over that channel, which it's a pretty ginormous feat. A lot of professionals can't do it. And
Yeah.
I remember clearing it, and I remember going up to go approach it the first time. And I was like, I'm not ready. And I just stopped and like went back to go do it, to try it again.
Yeah.
And then the next time I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And then I did it. And like, I was like, I'm going to go home because I just felt that was an achievement made and I don't need to die today. And like,
Big time.
try it again. But then like 2 or 3 weeks later, Sky Brown, she's very talented.
Oh yeah,
content creator.
when we were at Venice, she was there. Yeah, no, she's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah, and she's her and her family are pretty good friends of mine. But she, the worst case scenario happened to her, obviously, and she hesitated just like I did, but I veered away. She went for it, and she went upside down, and had all kinds
saw a
of
picture of her in the
injuries,
hospital and stuff. Oh my god,
I can't speak to exactly what all her injuries were, but they were like near catastrophic. So every once in a while, when you hesitate, it's for a good reason. And yeah, I guess
the times I've gotten hurt are hesitating and going for it, and like there's something inside you. Like I broke my back when I was 17, and it was at a skate contest. It's actually a great story. So I was getting this contest. My mom came to watch me. Big skate park in Visalia, the Visalia skate park. I won the first contest there, and this is the second one. So there's a little bit of pressure, and everybody's around the outside of the park. Well, they have a 3-foot high quarter pipe, and then they have a 4-foot tall fence, and then there's cement on the other side. So naturally, you got to launch over the fence, right? Yeah. And so I used to do that all the time. I just like ollie the fence, and I remember the owner of Onshore, Derek Shaw, rest in peace. He actually passed away a long time ago, but amazing guy. But he told me, he said, John, don't jump the fence in warm-ups because it'll surprise the judges when you do it in the contest. So I was like, okay, cool. Well, my mom came to watch me. I kind of like tweaked my ankle a little bit in warm-ups, and I was like, Mom, if I get hurt, like, don't say anything, don't come over, because my mom will get into it. Go, John, go. Like, that's for real, my mom. And so I was like, chill out. So my second run, I'm not skating very well. I was like, oh, I bet if I ollie the fence, I'll at least maybe I'll get third or second or something. I'm going too slow, and I knew it. I was like, I'm going for it anyway. Dude, front foot caught on the top. Fortunately, we had to wear helmets in that competition, or I mean, probably would have cracked my head open. But I just saw my hands and the cement compress my back the wrong way, fractured 2 vertebrae, everything. Well, the whole skate park, dude, vroom. And my mom is sitting in the stands talking to some lady. She's talking for like 5 minutes. And then eventually she's like, excuse me, that was my son who fell, and I should probably go check him out. It's just like, and then last part of the story, some kid is running over. He falls, he trips off like one of the ramps. He hits his teeth on the ground. So he's bleeding like crazy, screaming bloody murder. Well, the ambulance comes, and I'm in shock. I'm just chilling. They didn't see what happened between either one of us, right? So they see me on the ground, chilling in shock. They see this kid screaming bloody murder. Oh, my mouth. We both get in the same ambulance. They had me get up and have him lie down. And they even had me jump down out of the ambulance. And dude, could you imagine like if something had happened as a result, like, and then we found out my back was fractured. So,
oof,
Not
good.
Not good. I'm all good now, though. I do a lot of core workouts. All right, Greg. So I have 2 questions to bring it back to you and your business career here. The first one is, has the failure of skateboarding, like the fact that we fail for fun, the fact that you try things for fun over and over and over again, and the minority is rolling away. Has that impacted your ability to handle failure or challenges in business? Is my first question.
Yes, the direct answer is yes. Um, I didn't really recognize that for a long time though,
Yeah, me either. Yeah.
because I would just get just as frustrated in business as I did with my frustrations, falling and eating shit as
Right.
a skateboarder. But it definitely does like it definitely helps you sort of build confidence, and you can kind of see, you can recognize the smaller wins,
Yeah.
the steps of you know making progress, and you can kind of associate those small feats or steps of progress and know that they're laddering up to a bigger win.
Yeah.
And I know that, I think about that, I'm more conscious of that, I should say, as I've gotten older.
Yeah, I didn't realize it. I heard Mikey Taylor talk about it on a podcast one time, and he was, he's all into like investing and stuff, and he's doing
Mhm.
some amazing things. But he said, it's like, what I do, what I've done for a living professionally is fall on the ground. And so I was like, oh, I didn't realize that. Like, I'm pretty, I don't know, I don't give up too easily. And I was like, I wonder if that has something to do with it. My other question is, share a little bit with us, like some relevant, like youth marketing stuff, because like I feel like I feel like skateboarders are the hardest to reach, and I feel like I understand gamers and the esports community so well because I'm a skateboarder, and it's kind of like being raised by wolves, and then you go to the dog park, and you're like, what's everybody so intimidated about? And it's simply that we come from a industry that will not let anybody in from the outside. And gamers, I'm like, gamers just want you to like show you that you care about them and make your experience better. What's so hard about this, guys? And I think it's really a community first mindset. People are just can't get over thinking about themselves first. But man, I just love, you have this you've had this amazing skateboarding career, and you've had this amazing youth marketing career, and just broad marketing career beyond just youth. But drop a little knowledge on us here on the DLC Drop podcast, my friend.
I think the key is to contribute value,
Yeah.
and to to care, to care about not only like what you make as a business, but to care about the community that you serve or the audience that you serve, and you know really put forth the energy to make a difference, put forth, I'm not necessarily to give back or anything, but just to make a difference, to improve or progress or create, innovate, do something that's just special.
Yeah.
And I think knowing how to make the right cultural connections with between a brand, a product, or any type of a service organization,
Yeah.
and a targeted cultural community, whatever, an audience, is, it's like step one.
Right.
It's not something that you do later. It's not a seasonal thing where you all of a sudden decide that we're like this during the holiday season, and we're like this during the spring. It's like making a connection to audiences that best fit with your product, or service, and then making a commitment to that audience.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the you know big piece. The other, I think, once you do that, and which has been, I guess, I don't want to call it the secret sauce, but it's really been the reason why I've been able to maintain a leadership spot in youth culture, youth marketing for so long, is that my, I say me, but me and my team
Yeah.
over the years, teams have really mastered ways to facilitate co-creation, facilitate advisory councils and groups where we bring the audience in as partners in production, in any marketing campaign, any new product development, any brand development, whatever it might be. It doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
It could be 15, a mix of 15 people, or it could be up to 300. And the thing is like, I've done that for Walt Disney World. I've done that for leading cause organizations, Partnership for Drug-Free Kids, lists of well over 100 companies. But if you break it down, what do I do? It's just a
Yeah.
more sophisticated version of what we did, bringing it all the way back to Good Times and then the footwear brands,
Mm.
of making that cultural connection, facilitating a process with the right people,
Yeah.
do something for the right reasons. Of course, making profit is one of those reasons,
Of course.
and not the only reason. Um,
Nope.
and I think sort of you could even say this wraps around all those topics, are finding a way to be authentic
Yeah.
with your brand, your identity, but then be authentic from the perception of that audience,
Mm.
which is often very different. And when you find that balance of developing something that the audience feels is authentic and is truly authentic or original, it's something very, it's something authentic, it's something,
Right.
special, then at that point, that's just the starting point to getting relevant. And
Yep.
that's what we're all seeking to do, is we're seeking to take very, authentic products and services with,
Yeah.
and then finding audiences that also they feel authentic and well connected to them. And then our work starts. I'm joking,
Right.
but then our real work starts is to go get relevant, and then, create experiences and engagement that brings results and business results from, acquisition, sales, fan bases, what have you, whatever your goals are. We could talk
Yeah.
about this forever and ever. I'm going to get lost in a second. So
Right.
you need to bring it back.
Pull it back. Pull it back. Pull the chute. Yeah. I always say, authenticity is not a tactic; it's a mindset. And so, like, you should not be saying, "How can we be authentic?" You should just be authentic.
Right.
And then step one is not even step one, because that's just your entire mentality. Now, you might need to do some homework as to, and I understand this, like, okay, non-endemics who like don't understand the space. Okay, what are the different touch points? Like, what do people like? Like the relevance, right? Like in the gaming industry, like Among Us has like been insane. AOC is streaming Among Us today, or she did yesterday or something, and it's just like this huge thing. Bleacher Report, they do this animated series called Gridiron Heights,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just kind of spoofs the NFL situation for that week. And the last episode was like players as the Among Us characters, like
So
shooting
good.
each other off the ship and everything. And
Perfect.
so I think it's like I understand like needing to figure out like, okay, what do the kids like? But you need to start with, how do I add value? And I'll give you this example. I'm really curious to get you to react to this, because this is my guiding light in like every activation, just the way I think about everything. And is Nike and skateboarding. And that's a loaded statement, but I'm going to give you one example here. I always say Nike is two things in skateboarding: public enemy number one, and market share number one. Like, you go to any skate park, all the kids are wearing Nikes, right?
Yeah.
And so Nike actually took three different times to try to get into the skateboarding space. The first two times it failed miserably. The third time, they sponsored core dudes. I'm talking Chet Childress, Richard Mulder, right? Like guys who were beyond reproach in the eyes of the industry, where people would give them a chance. Like they wouldn't just be like, "F you, you're with Nike." They would be like, "Why are you wearing Nikes?" And the answer was, "Man, you can hate, but they are flying me all around the world, enabling me to do what I love to do for a living." And then they built that. Now they have the super team. Now they sponsor everybody. But the crowning moment in my mind where Nike was embraced, and this is why I mean they've earned my trust in skateboarding. Now, do they do everything right? Of course not, right? But I skate Nikes because I think the shoe is a better product than a lot of them out there. Now you could say, okay, Vans or is way up there too, and you've got obviously these other big brands. But this is the point where I think Nike like earned the community's trust, and it was the West LA courthouse. And
Oh, yeah.
so people unfamiliar with the skateboarding scene is that skateboarding is all about street skateboarding. It's not about the parks. It's about doing it in the streets, skating what's not meant to be skated. And one of the best skate spots in the entire world is the West LA Courthouse, or sometimes referred to as the Santa Monica Courthouse. And so it's in all the videos in the 90s. Perfect ledges. It's like a skate park. It's like a skate plaza. And over time, the act of skateboarding destroys property. It's unfortunate because it wouldn't be illegal if it didn't. But ultimately, it became illegal to skate at the courthouse. And Nike worked with the city of Los Angeles to legalize skateboarding at the courthouse, and they refurbished it with beautiful metal edges. Now you could, skateboards have an opinion. Is it still the streets? Because now it's got metal edges. But they used their evil powers, right, which is their large sum of money and their influence for good, to give skateboarding something that skateboarding could not get for themselves.
Yeah.
And you can hate on Nike for all sorts of reasons, but if you can look at that situation and you can't hate on that, no matter how much you like them or you don't. And so that's my guiding light. And I'm like, dude, let's do this in esports. Let's do this in other subcultural communities. Like, if you can give the audience something that they want but can't attain for themselves, your brand will be embraced. And so I'm curious to get your reaction to that amazing case study, because I think it's
I mean, obviously I have an intimate knowledge of that, having lived with Jaya Bondarov and a lot of the original Nike athletes, and did the whole story with Nike's approval in my book. And I would say I agree with you. In fact, but it's not really surprising that they make a superior product, or equal to or a superior product in many ways.
Of course.
But I think
the R&D and everything coming from traditional sports and applying it, the insoles, like, they have the new Bruin React or whatever it's called. And it's like, yeah, you just have like a gazillion dollars of R&D, and you can apply this to skateboarding, and skateboarding shoes have been pretty simple in the past.
Yeah. But what Nike did was very simple when they finally decided to execute on it. And they did three things. They listened, they co-created, and they committed. And when they did that and listened to not just the talent or the athletes, but the retailers, and said, bring back the dunk.
Yeah.
And, bring in some of your heritage.
Support the local skate shops.
Yeah. And then make special products and colorways, and even, entire product that was purely support the localized retailer.
Yep.
It was as terrible as it sounds, but it was thinking global and acting locally. It was influencer driven. It was connected to a very core audience. And the genius of that segmentation or targeting strategy is that they understood how just skateboarding as a core target demographic is too small. So they understood how to, cross connect sneakerheads, artists, skateboarders, other people into fashion, to create a super group, which was a very commercially viable audience that then just impacted all of pop culture. And that's what they did and continue to do today. And, the rest is history.
You just gave me a great idea that I'm not going to share on this podcast. I'm going to call you after this and tell you, because I think there's something we can do together that it would be very unique in the esports space that hasn't been done, that would provide a ton of value. So thank you for
I love it.
Putting that idea in my head.
I love it.
Last thing I want to talk about here before I let you get on with your day and conquering the world is simply a little, I want to say, depth with the skepticism of non-endemics. And this is my perspective, and I want to get yours. Is in skateboarding, and I think it's true in esports as well, we're not so much fearful of brands coming in the space as much as we are them leaving once they've got what they want from us. And I think that's the core thing that brands need to understand. Now there's a whole aspect to pure, skateboarders are purists, right? So you want to keep the space pure. You don't want to make it whack and all of this stuff. But we've all lived through, like anybody who's been around for any length of time, whether it's skateboarding or esports, has seen these spikes in opportunities or tournaments or content because a big brand came in and put dollars in. And then everybody lost their jobs when the brand left and they got what they wanted from our community and they saw, okay, it's not here anymore, and they left. Now, I'm a business guy and I understand the C-suite. I understand them looking at the numbers and saying, look, we need ROI on our partnerships. And like the reason I put money in is because I make more money than if I don't, or if I put it somewhere else. So there is like a business aspect to it that I recognize and I respect and I understand. But this is what I would say to brands is one of the biggest things that you can do for our subcultures, for our niche communities, is to commit long term. And because I mean we've seen it 100 times, and so what's happened is like we get excited when the spikes come, right? Early on. But we've seen it happen a couple times. So now the next person comes and says, "Hey, we want to do a tournament," or "Hey, we want to, Nike coming into skateboarding," right? Or whatever. It's like, yeah, you're not here for me because I've seen people like you, and I know you just want my dollars and my eyeballs until they don't do it for you anymore, and then you're going to move on.
Yeah.
Accurate?
It's very accurate. There's no real one simple answer for it either. I think,
Yeah.
When you want to target subcultures, it could be beauty vloggers, huge subcultures, skateboarding, it could be esports, obviously music, esports, skateboarding have a very, some interesting and not similarities, but, in certain ways of how you would approach the cultures.
Sure.
I think, one lesson learned is that if you want to tap those cultures, that you don't have to necessarily go in big, blow it all at once, and then not be able to continue, just to kind of go slow and
Good
steady
point.
when you are going to connect with cultural groups. It could be, really, I guess anything, I guess interest-based, activity-centric cultural groups. I'm trying to kind of get that all out in one. This, if you just jump in and blow all your cash, that's going to last for one quarter. It might make more sense to just, have a smaller, more subtle presence and stay if you want to be trusted, if you actually want to build roots,
Yeah.
and actually have them earn earn the audience's trust, which then, is the best recipe for a ongoing customer relationship. That's at least one tangible piece of advice.
Yeah, that's a great piece of advice. I think in multiple ways in just life too. What burns hot burns out. And so you got that. You start slow. Now people might say, okay, if you're just doing a little bit, are you really committed, right? And I think part of that has to do with maybe who you're doing it with, like who your partners in the space are. Because you have to create advocates for yourself, for your brand, to say, yeah, man, no, Chipotle is legit. Like they're here for us. We're supporting them, in esports or whatever that example is.
It's hard for big companies. I'm not gonna name any names because I'm all these like specific companies are swirling in my head, and I've been told in meetings, hey, we don't have at our big global retailer, we don't have people like you. We don't have 20 or 30 of you to make that cultural connection that way. Right. So there are other, ways of making connections to consumer audiences. They all do stem from a true care, a true desire to contribute value, which is something we've mentioned multiple times in this. And I guess it's just moving from, pure, media buying to content driven storytelling around something interesting that matters to the audience, that can help you sell your product. And then you have a symbiotic relationship. Obviously, many companies and organizations and agencies do an incredible job at doing that kind of storytelling, and many don't.
Yeah.
Which keeps us in business.
Man, I could keep talking to you for a million years, both marketing and skateboarding. And that's what I enjoy about our conversations that we have all the time. Before I let you go, anything that you would like to plug? Where can people find you? This is your promo moment.
Yeah, I mean, I think to plug, if you're looking to connect in a meaningful way with alpha generation from tweens, teens, and young adults, I think like our company Engage Youth Co does a great job doing that. I think the plug is to commit your teams and pull the right people together in any sort of project or endeavor that you do to build that authenticity, and then get your company message and your content storytelling and your product or service to be relevant. Great product is the best form of marketing. And I could go on and on and on. The way where you find me best and where you find my, where you tap into my thought leadership is on LinkedIn. Gregg Witt, cool. Think with Wit is the name of my handle, but that's the best place to connect with me, on LinkedIn.
Perfect, man. Well, thank you for joining us. And I also just want to thank our audience for joining and supporting the podcast. So this has been another episode of the DLC Drop podcast with guest Gregg Witt. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the DLC Drop podcast. This podcast is part of the Esports Futuri Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast channel and leave us a review.